Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Deep Focus Show. I'm Aiden,
I'm Clay.
I'm Max.
and
So
we're doing another installment of the 1950s series where we're going through a number of films that came out in the 50s and, giving our thoughts on them, how they compare to a lot of the other stuff coming out that decade and movies today. And today we have a movie that was Best Picture winner in 1955. It has had a great deal of longevity, I guess, as a movie experience and kind of a touchstone in acting, especially, which is On the Waterfront, directed by Elia Kazan and starring Marlon Brando. So, if there's anything you guys want to say about the movie before we get into it, go ahead.
I will just say, whenever I saw this was kind of like a gangster type film, my expectations were a little low, but I enjoyed it overall.
You don't like gangster movies?
I'm very hit or miss with those, just like Western movies. I probably prefer gangster films to Western movies, though. But I haven't seen a lot of both genres, so lots to explore there.
yeah, for me, you know, I would like to have seen more Elia Kazan films. I've just seen some of the major ones like Streetcar and Face in the Crowd and stuff. And Face in the Crowd is like one of my favorite movies. So I mean, this would I couldn't call this my favorite Elia Kazan movie, but I've also seen Panic in the Streets randomly because my dad had it on DVD. And then Pinky, I just randomly got from the library when I was like 12 or something. So I've seen like five of his films. And I mean, I probably shouldn't give away how I feel. Oh, The Last Tycoon, too. I've seen The Last Tycoon. That's a cool movie. I think that's kind of an underrated movie. It has kind of a weird vibe to it, but I dug it. But yeah, he's a good director. I don't think that is a controversial opinion.
Did any of his movies get other awards? Any of his other movies, or just this one?
Not a few others did. I mean,
Yeah, I think this
yeah,
is Gentleman's Agreement won Best Picture, didn't
that
it?
one Best
This
Picture,
was,
yeah.
this was his second Best Picture win.
And
Um,
Streetcar got nominated for Best Picture. It didn't win, but
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I'll go ahead and get started. As always, I'm gonna kind of talk about the film before I dive into my thoughts. The film stars the very handsome Marlon Brando. Love him. Carl Malden, Eva Marie Saint, who is still alive, by the way. She's 100 years old, Queen. And Lee J. Cobb. Set against the gritty backdrop of the New York City waterfront, the film explores themes of corruption, morality, and redemption. It opens with Terry Malloy, played by Brando, being involved in a shady operation run by the corrupt union boss. His name is Johnny Friendly. He's not a very friendly guy. He's played by Cobb. Terry's actions indirectly lead to the death of a man named Doyle, which is like the very first opening of the scene. So it just kind of pulls you right in. Opening of the movie, I should say. He was planning to testify against the union. I'm not sure, like, with those testimonials, I wasn't exactly sure what kind of shady dealings was going on. Anyways, Brando, he feels complicit in the murder of Cobb's character Doyle. I think the casting of Lee J. Cobb as Friendly is great. He has this kind of jock face. He reminds me of like a middle school bully in man form. Terry has a relationship with Saint's character, Edie. She's Joey's sister. She's mourning the loss of her brother. They become close, and Edie encourages Terry to speak out about the corruption, hoping that her brother's death won't be in vain. And Terry kind of wrestles with his conscience throughout this movie, and his relationship with her kind of deepens. I like Brando's love for birds, and that's how him and Edie kind of bond. There's one scene where someone says a pigeon for a pigeon at the end. I really like that quote. I'm not going to spoil that, but that's probably one of my favorite quotes in this movie. The scene where Brando tells Evie about his involvement with her brother's death is pretty intense. There's also Priest in here. He's trying to be kind of Brando's moral compass. The final act is pretty intense when Brando decides to not take friendly sidekick Charlie up with his job offer. Shit kind of hits the fan from there. Brando is definitely the standout in this movie. His charisma and personality alone were enough to carry this film. The movie is a great example about fighting against corruption. It also includes a bloody fight, so it's both literal and physical. I'm going 4.5 for this. I found the character of the priest to be kind of on the nose. It brought some heavy-handed and not subtle symbol of morality. And I didn't like his character. I thought he was kind of annoying. So, but he's such a prominent person of this film, and that's probably why I can't give it 5 stars. Otherwise, this is fantastic. Cinematography, score. I really love the score, especially during the intense moments. But yeah, I'm going 4.5 for this. Maybe with a couple of rewatches, it could get to 5, but I really enjoyed this one a lot. Definitely amongst my favorites of the 50s movies that we've done.
All right. Well, I've seen this movie a number of times, though it had been a few years, and I think this is an incredible movie. Just, on pretty much every front. I mean, it's written by Bud Schulberg, who's the same guy who wrote Face in the Crowd, so he's a wonderful writer. That music by Leonard Bernstein, he's a fantastic composer, and this is one of his best film scores. And just the cast in this is crazy good. I mean, Brando's incredible, obviously, and he won the Oscar for it as he should have. And Eva Marie Saint won too. And this was Eva Marie Saint's first movie, which this is one of the great film debuts ever. Like, she's fantastic in it. I mean, it wasn't like she had no experience. She had done a lot of television and actually become pretty successful through her television work. But this was the first time she was in a theatrical film, and she did incredibly well. And then you had this movie getting nominated for supporting actor, 3 nominations for supporting actor, which almost never happens. Lee J. Cobb, Rod Steiger, Carl Malden all got nominated, and none of them won, which is kind of hilarious. But I think all 3 performances are really good. My favorite of the 3 is Lee J. Cobb. I think he's a great bad guy in this. It's kind of similar to his part in 12 Angry Men, where he's this very unlikable guy, but there's some kind of weakness in him. Like, there's something in him you can pity, and you can tell that he's like compensating for a lot, you know. So he's really good. And I mean, it was a very, kind of innovative movie for its time, just kind of in the way it was shot too. I mean, the cinematography, I think, is very creative a lot of the time. The one thing that I think is funny about it is that this came out, shortly after Elia Kazan named a lot of names to McCarthy, so this is at least partially a justification for him doing that. It's a justification about, why it's right to speak out when you see an injustice, And, in my opinion, the whole communist witch hunt was not a fantastic thing that happened. I'm not a big fan of it. So if I look at that, if I let that influence the way I view the film, it makes it a little weird for me. But you can't deny that it's a great film on pretty much every front. I try not to let that aspect of it bother me, because it's just so beautifully done. So yeah, I mean, I would give it 5 stars, and I would say it's one of the best films of the decade. I mean, I don't know if it's top 10. I haven't written that out or anything, but it would certainly be in the conversation for me.
Yeah, I guess I'm glad you brought up the kind of McCarthyism element, because I was going to talk a little bit about that in terms of like the film is based on a series of articles that were published, I think, in the New York Sun in the late 40s about like corruption on like in New Jersey on the waterfront, quite literally. But I do think there was the impetus to make this movie after he like named names to HUAC. I think that colors the entire movie. Like it's very clearly a movie that is written to like vindicate himself in a way, and it's very much about that. But I don't think it colors my perception of the film very much because I think it would be more annoying if it was like overtly like about like some guy like fighting communism or some dumb shit like that. Um, but I think it by doing this story like this, it becomes a little universal, and it's easier to look past that. But yeah, just on the level of filmmaking, just so many elements of this are just so incredibly done, and especially, I mean, the highlight is definitely for me just the acting in terms of like Brando's performance. That kind of performance had never really been done before. It was so much more like naturalistic and like kind of grounded than everything else you see in movies in that era. Like it must have really been a kind of revelation seeing it the first time. I think it's probably like in the conversation, certainly for like best performances of the decade. For me, I'm going 5 stars just because I think it's a very universal story. The score as well. You guys talked about the music a little bit. Leonard Bernstein did the music, which is the only film score he did that was not kind of like an adaptation or an arrangement. So it's very special in that sense, in the sense of, we have this incredible talent doing the music. And I think the scene that always sticks with me kind of in terms of the sound is when like he tells um Ava Marie Saint's character's name, I'm blanking on her name for some reason, like about her brother, and you get the like train whistle like screech in the background. It's just like that's like such a like inspired piece of sound design that you really don't see in like every movie. Something like a moment like that, the kind of traditional way to play it would be like very somber and like reflective. But instead of doing that, they play it as very like discordant and disorientating, which I think really works, and it's not what you would expect. I kind of get where Clay's coming from in terms of the priest character as this kind of like not so much Deus Ex Machina, but like a kind of moral paragon that like compels the narrative in certain directions it might not otherwise go. It doesn't bother me that much because I think this is kind of already like a fable in a way. Like it's not aiming for realism so much as like these kind of like heightened morals. It's kind of like a sun play, I guess. So that doesn't bug me that much, but I do kind of get the criticism. But yeah, regardless, I'm going with a 5 star just because I think seeing this movie is just electrifying. Like I saw it on the big screen last fall, and it was just like you are totally sucked in. It doesn't have any sense of like dull pacing. I think all of the supporting actors and actresses do a really exceptional job. Like Lee J. Cobb, Rod Steiger, which this was one of his first big roles as well. Um, so yeah, yeah, I think this is just a really great movie. It's, the kind of movie that is kind of like era defining in a way. Like it's very kind of significant to the times, and there's so much to talk about what it's going for, why Kazan made it, uh, why they went with such a different approach to like acting. But yeah, I think it's a very great movie.
I also really like that scene where he kind of it explains to Edie's character what he's done.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's just like, yeah, that scene is such an interesting, and there's an interesting element about this movie too, that there's like a bunch of different like aspect ratio versions, because this was shot like right when the studios were transitioning from like full screen to widescreen. So there's a version of this movie that has like the full like old school Academy like pillar box, and then there's one that's like the full screen, and then there's one that's even wider. And I think I've seen all of them like by accident at some point, because I think they play all of them depending on the time. But that's another kind of interesting like historical oddity about this movie, I guess. Yeah, do you guys have any other comments or about the film?
Not really. I mean, I just want to say, if you love this movie, once again, watch the other Elia Kazan Bud Schulberg collaboration, A Face in the Crowd, because that's much less seen, and I think that's a really incredible movie too. Like on par with this, I would say.
That's on our wheel too.
Oh,
So
good, great.
yes,
Which we
thankfully.
still have to spin. So
We forgot to do that. Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
tell you in the comments or in the
Yeah. Put a pinned
summary.
comment.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be after this video will be Steven Spielberg. We're covering Saving Private Ryan. Thank you guys for following along with our 50 series. I know Vanessa, shout out to her. She's going to be catching up pretty soon. And yeah. Thanks for watching and bye.
Bye.
Take care.